Thanks again for staying with us on the ultimate news and current affairs program on television, TMI, on the ITV network. Well, one major issue that has been of a serious burden to business people, economists, and what have you, and perhaps the government of the day, is how to wage the Naira and prevent it from a free fall. In the last couple of weeks and maybe months, we've seen the Naira nosedive with escalation of its free fall against the dollar. A lot of statistics analysis have been put out there as to why this has been so. From getting close to 1,500 Naira to the dollar, we've seen the Naira in the last couple of days recede to 1,000 Naira to the dollar, and now about 990 something Naira to the dollar. Is this sustainable? But we must give kudos and credit to the government of the day for this rebound of the Naira. I mean, we shouldn't always criticize when things are not going well. When things are on the positive side, we should acknowledge it and give credit to whom credit is due. And if eventually there is a change, we can also put it at their doorsteps. But let me get Engineer Sam Ahano, who is a development consultant, to join this live discussion from Abuja. Engineer Ahano, many thanks again for joining us on TMI on the ITV network. The situation calls for collaborative efforts, new knowledge, new perspectives, new ideas to be able to rig the system of what we have today that is helping to strengthen the Naira. But we're seeing the Naira going down against the dollar. So what's your take on how we got here, and how do you think we can remedy the situation, as it were?
Yeah, Mr. Sonido, thanks for having me, and good morning to everybody in the studio. I would say it's basically a simple situation. No matter how complex things are, you can always break them down into simple models so that people can understand. Because when things are escalated this way, the common man on the streets suffers it, and it doesn't even understand exactly what is happening. So everything falls back again to the door of the president. And the president, of course, is not going to carry out any magic. So we need to understand exactly how we got there. So, pardon me, just give me some few moments. Let's go back to the narrative, how we all got here. Basically, people were saying in the 70s, and Naira was like 40 kobo, and many other stories, but let's leave that for another day. Now, simply, this is how it starts, or this is how it works. You have, in basic elementary finance, revenue against expenditure. That's the way it goes for every human. Your revenue is what you get, maybe a salary or a wage, and your expenditure is what you spend. So, for example, if you earn 100,000 Naira a month, and your transportation, feeding, accommodation, and every other expense goes to 90 Naira, and that means your net savings is 10,000 Naira. That's actually what you own as an asset in the days of that. So let's assume your revenue moves from 100 Naira, 100,000 Naira a month, to 35,000 Naira a month, and your expense is 90 Naira. What that simply means is that you're going to borrow money to pay up the balance. Let's assume you do a very good stringent austerity measure and you reduce your revenue. I hope you can hear me.
Loud and clear. Go, I'm listening.
Yeah. So you reduce your expenditure from 19 Naira to, let's say, 16 Naira. Maybe you move from a self-contained apartment to a face me, I face you. You eat 101, you skip your lunch, you put your children in public school and do things like that. And you're able to drive down your expenditure to 60 Naira. But your 35,000 Naira salary is still way below your 60 Naira, which means you're still going to borrow 25,000 Naira to augment. And that's what actually President Buhari faced. In all sincerity, because you see, people need to criticize things from an objective point of view, not just subjectivity. That's what the government faced. And not having a very strong economic team as it were in our administration, and of course, there is no rocket science to it. The first option for anybody to do is to borrow. And and wish for a good day tomorrow. And so that's how we first landed in that situation. And then when people began to see that the economy was no longer stable, people began to hold foreign currency because they felt foreign currency was more stable as a means of saving assets. So if you do not have houses and you have hard currency, either the US dollar, the European euro, the British pound sterling, then you can secure your future. And so people began to hold foreign currency. And that is a reality. Whether there are statistics to that or not, we know that currencies were being hoarded in this country, local and foreign currency. Now, the simple principle of demand and supply is what drives basics in economics. For example, if you have demand getting higher than supply, say in the community, people need, we have 10,000 people in the community, and somebody is only able to farm 500 tubers of yam, and yam is a staple food in that community. What will simply happen is that 10,000 rushing to buy 500 tubers will raise the price of the tuber. And what will naturally happen? The rich ones will be the first to buy the yam, but the poor ones may end up drinking all the water. Now, Nigeria's major revenue source is oil and gas. We know we are more of a gas country than oil, but the truth of the matter is that our gas reserves are totally or basically highly underdeveloped. So we do more of crude. Now, Nigeria has a quota of 1.8 million barrels from OPEC, which means we cannot export more than that because we're a member of OPEC. Now, at that point of drilling, if you do the simple math, and I've done this with classroom students many times, especially those who keep screaming on government, it's not that it's regardless of the political party, it's the same thing. Now, if you do 1.8 million barrels, please multiply by $85 to a barrel, multiply by maybe 1,000 naira to $1, and divide it by 200 million people. You'll be shocked to arrive at basically about 150 to 200 naira, if my math is correct, per citizen. Can a Nigerian live on 200 naira a day? The answer is no. So that simply means that since we live in a welfareism administration since 1960, where the government tells you that don't worry, I will take care of your food, I'll give you free education, I'll give you free health, you will drive on asphalt road without paying toll gates. That's the system we developed. And so we engineered Nigerians for over 60 years to live in that kind of lifestyle.
Okay.
And we always told them, oh, we have more than enough. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. Even the United States cannot provide free education for their citizens at tertiary level. So why should a country that is not even up to 1% of the wealth of the United States be affording to give free welfareism in all sectors? I know that's again another argument for that day because people say, well, we're not living well, so why can't the government provide? But how can the government provide that also they won't have? Now, you do the maths. You also agree right now that Nigeria is not even drilling up to 1.8 million barrels. Because oil is like a borehole. The more you source petroleum, crude from a well, the less it has as the years go by. You now have more of water than crude coming out. So naturally, what you do is you invest more and drill more oil wells.
Okay.
And these are things that cost hundreds of millions of US dollars. The Nigerian government doesn't have that kind of fund. And so most of the time, oil wells are developed by JVs, joint ventures done with Shell, Total, Mobil, and the rest of them, the oil giants. Now we have known that for the past 10 years, most of these oil companies are no longer investing in Nigeria. They are moving to Gabon, they are moving to Equatorial Guinea, they are moving to Sao Tome and Principe. They are moving to economies where you will say are more friendly, but I believe they are moving to economies that are poorer and who will allow them to come in and do whatever they want to do without having stringent laws against them. And so, we also have the issue of oil theft, which is also reducing the amount of oil that is leaving the country.
Okay.
Now, even if we're selling or drilling 1.8 million barrels and we're bringing out the revenue right now cannot meet expenditure. That is number one. So, if you have $1 billion coming to Nigeria and you have a demand for $2.5 billion, what will simply happen is that the region will scramble for it, the price will jump up. Don't also forget that Nigeria is a net importer of everything. We import toothpaste, pencils, palm oil. We import basically corn, soya bean. A country that spends about $4 billion importing food. A country that spends about $5 billion importing cars. A country that spends about $1.5 to $4 billion importing steel, including your iron rods. How can that economy grow? A country that spends about $11 billion importing petrol, kerosene, diesel, and aviation fuel. So the summary is that expenditure is higher than revenue. And the expenditure is trade. We import everything we do. So to start off the discussion, I will probably go in more details later on what to really be done. One of the simple solutions is this. It is simply to ban importation of the produce locally.
To ban
Again,
importation.
people will scream. The government has to prepare the people.
Okay.
But how do you prepare people when you don't have money? Except you borrow again from the World Bank and then you increase. Let's not forget, I'll say this as a last point at this initial stage of the discussions. For every Naira that Nigeria makes as revenue coming from oil and gas exports, Nigeria spends 90 kobo servicing our debt. When you service a debt, you're not paying the debt, you are paying the interest on the debt. So the 77 trillion Naira Nigeria is owing is still piling up there. We only pay interest. So if you earn 100 Naira today, you spend 90 Naira to pay your debtors their interest rates. You have only 10 Naira to feed yourself. So if your general expenses in the day is 18 Naira, you go and borrow again. Maybe as the discussion goes on, I will offer the simple solutions that Nigeria has to, the government has.
All right, Engineer Sam, let me just pause you here and allow you to give you some direction, some of the conversation on this free fall of the Naira. If we have much time, probably we'll expand our conversation. But here's the point. As we speak, I haven't fallen several times. The Naira seems to have, is now having a rebound from 1,500 to 1,300 something, and then 1,000, and then 900 and something. And I hear people say, well, this is a result of floating the Naira, so which means the exchange rate is now the product of demand and supply. Is this sustainable?
It's sustainable because the truth of the matter is that the true state of the Naira is roughly 1,000 Naira per dollar. And this has been the true state for the past 4 or 5 years. We were only lying to ourselves when central bank began to implement a dual exchange rate, which most foreigners frowned at. You go to the open market, you're buying a dollar at 750 or 650, and then CPN is giving it to you at 450 Naira, which was unsustainable and unrealistic. I will address that a bit. The central bank system itself likely was pulling money from the foreign reserves to sustain this trade balance, to create a 450 Naira, which was more like a horse, either what is right, so unrealistic. When the new president came in, the first thing he did was to float the dollar. This is a free market economy, and if you want Nigeria to really be a capitalist economy or a mixed economy, then you must allow the realities to be set. Let Nigerians truly know that the economy is not as strong as it is. Let's not forget that in 1979 to 1983, before the president, MPN government by President Alhaji Shehu Shagari was imposed by General Buhari's administration, let's not forget also that the government went into an austerity measure plan, simply meaning the economy was already in a bad status in 1982. Let's also forget again that President General Babangida also floated in the second-tier foreign exchange market, which also increased the Naira, moved the Naira from 1 Naira to 3 Naira to 5 Naira to 10 Naira. These things didn't start today. We're talking about 35 years ago. So bringing it back home, the truth is one of the pressures you have on the dollar at this time were three. One, people started holding dollars. So the amount of dollar that was available in the foreign exchange market, whether in the banks or the black market, reduced. So the price jumped up. Number two, at the same period of time, people were doing a lot of international transactions, including paying of school fees. That also jumped it a bit. Number three, this is just post-election era. A lot of people who involved their finances in election were getting their monies back and were not sure, and also began to pile up their money in foreign exchange. Number four, a lot of Nigerians have been moving out of the country, paying school fees in the UK and other countries for master's degree programs and others. This is hard currency. And then the last, which is not the least, remember that the 43 prohibited items were not banned items. They were prohibited from the forex FX market in the formal market, in the formal sector, which is in the banking system.
Okay.
And so Ever since the president moved them out, they now had the power to come back into the banking system to source for FX. And all these are the things that created the imbalance, pushing it to 1,003 and above.
Okay.
JP Morgan has already predicted that before December this year, we may jump back again to 850. But I believe personally that we'll be floating around 8,000 Naira to $1. And that may be sustainable for the next 6-8 months. Again, remember that the federal government has already made a plan. There are two plans on ground. One to borrow another $7.9 billion, basically for infrastructure. And then you also have another $10 billion that is coming in, which is advance payment for oil and gas. It is not free money, it's advance payment. So if the government decides to put that advance payment into the FX market, the dollar may crash to 500 Naira, but will damage the economy because in the next 8 months, it will resort again to 1,005. So what the government can do is that if we have advance payment, which is not the first time we are doing, that advance payment can be used for infrastructure. Infrastructure that is cost recovery driven. You build railways and then you increase your fare. You build federal highways, please you must put toll gates. You build an infrastructure that sustains direct economic activity and not social amenities like building stadiums and recreational parks that is not going to develop any employment for anybody. So for now, floating a dollar is the best approach. What is going to happen is that Nigerians become more sustainable by going back indoors and producing what you eat. If a country can reduce its expense of $4 billion importing food, Dangote refinery starting up in the next 2-3 months, hopefully. Kaduna is going to start by December this year. Port Harcourt may start by before April next year. So again, you already know that the import of petroleum product has fallen by 48%. And you also know that petroleum prices has increased in Ghana, Togo, and all the West African countries, including Angola. Which simply means a lot of them were pulling up, enjoying our free petrol, but right now they are paying the price. I read that about a week or two ago, there was 3 days crisis in Ghana. They were rioting in Ghana. So Ghana is not as fantastic as people paint it. Togo has gone the other way. And so what will happen is this. The floating is the best option. Nigerians will begin to move to alternative fuels like CNG, which you mentioned earlier. And don't forget that those states is ahead of every other state in Nigeria. We started doing CNG 12 years ago. So it's not rocket science to Edo State. It could be rocket science to even Lagos or Kaduna, but not to Edo State. And so what I expect people to do is to begin to harness CNG, for example. If we reduce the FX living, and if we have more local content produced from Kaduna, Port Harcourt, and Dangote, then about $14 billion will move out from the FX market in the next 18 months, which could crash the dollar to 300 Naira in the next 22 months. So it's a watch. Let's see how more people begin to become more realistic in their ingenuity in sustaining the economy by local production of food and local production of money. If you make what you use, you don't need the US dollar. If you don't need the US dollar, the price will drop. When the price drops, the economy rebounds, and Nigeria is good to do.
Fantastic, Engineer Sam Ahano. Some of these analysis that you've given and the expectations in terms of policy shift, policy direction to be able to mitigate all of these things. And I want to thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll be able to have you here subsequently so we can review some of these issues and see how we can bring some more perspectives into them to impact on the economy. Many thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's the TMI on the ITV network. Just in time now for us to link you with our Abuja network studio for the continuation of our discussion segment on the show.